We're live, everybody. Welcome in. It is Wednesday, I think, March 6th, 3:17 p.m. Central. It's Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. Thank God. I don't even know. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us today. A lot to talk about. This is a continuation of the discussion that Richard and I had, I guess a couple weeks ago now, or even was it even last week? I don't remember. It was recent. About the lawsuit that Elon Musk had against OpenAI, basically saying that OpenAI is a closed source for-profit entity masquerading as an open source nonprofit entity. And Elon Musk brought a suit forward, of which I have pulled up right here, that basically says that OpenAI has had a breach of contract, that they're no longer, that basically not fulfilling their original motive of being for-profit and open source, or non-profit and open source. They have all these different actions that they put together that basically says, hey, y'all need to probably stop doing what you're doing or rejigger how you're functioning as a company because you're not really doing what you say you're doing. And so I have a huge problem with that. And this gathered a ton of attention around the internet in the last week. Now we have OpenAI put out a blog post last night. If you like business drama, boy, are you in the right place, because this is a lot of business drama. OpenAI put together a blog post yesterday that essentially fights back toward versus Elon and says, hey, Elon, basically the gist here, and I'll read some portions of it, is that Elon is acting in a hypocritical manner because they have emails and correspondences that they say essentially gives them a right to do what they're doing because Elon was in favor for OpenAI being for profit and in favor of OpenAI being closed source. There are some emails that they attached, which I can very quickly summarize for you. And go ahead.
The second email, I want to know who the person is that's blacked out. It's really, that's
this
more
one.
my, yeah.
Right. The
sender. I think it's a sender.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So the reason why is this email right here contains from a unnamed source, basically sending to Elon that says, hey, we've probably for OpenAI to work is that one of the ideas we have is for it to be rolled under Tesla so that Tesla can be the cash cow to fund all the operations for OpenAI, which Elon then forwarded to Ilya and Greg at OpenAI saying this is exactly right. We wish it otherwise, but in my and Blank's opinion, Tesla is the only path that could even hope to hold a candle to Google. Even then, the probability of being a counterweight to Google is small, it just isn't zero. So there's an email that says, hey, Elon proposed to OpenAI that they should basically attach it to Tesla so they can raise money to fund their compute. And there's a lot of complexities there. Then there's a separate email that Ilya sent to Elon. Part of the email said that as Ilya proposed that as they get closer to building AI, it makes sense to start being less open. The open in OpenAI means that everyone should benefit from the fruits of AI after it's built, but it's totally okay to not share the science in addition to some other stuff before, to which Elon replied, yep. I'm assuming in agreeance to what was just said in this email. Usually that's what YEP stands for. And then there's also some commentary from OpenAI, which is very interesting, where they said that in 2017, when Elon and OpenAI decided that the next step for the mission was to create a for-profit entity, Elon wanted majority equity, initial board control, and to be CEO of this, whatever this entity is now. I don't know if they would rename it Closed AI or whatever at that point, but essentially it's OpenAI. In the middle of these discussions, he withheld funding. Reid Hoffman bridged the gap, who is a person that has a bunch of money, essentially.
And he's not my father.
And he's not your father, even though your name is Richard Hoffman. Thank you. That was a very important tidbit. Thank you, Richard. And eventually what happened, what they claim is after the whole Tesla idea, OpenAI wasn't comfortable with because they felt like no one person should be in charge of the thing. Elon's like, okay, I'm going to peace out. I'm just going to do my thing with Tesla. I'm going to do my thing with XAI. I'm going to keep throwing you guys money. And OpenAI claims that he was still supportive of their mission. Now, I do want to read this bit here because this is kind of like what was the summary? Okay, this is the summary I want to read. this is AI's words. We're sad that it's come to this with someone whom we've deeply admired, someone who inspired us to aim higher. Then he told us we would fail, started a competitor, and then sued us when we started making meaningful progress towards OpenAI's mission without him. Now, on the flip side, what I find very interesting, and this is where we start, because Richard is a lawyer by profession, and the reason why we have Richard on is because he can help us understand if any of this holds water. Like, what the hell is going on here? So that's number one. Number two, maybe we can speculate on some other things. From the lawsuit, there is a line that they put in the document, which I freaking lost my place, and I'm going to find it here in a second, that basically put the onus of founding OpenAI under Sam. So the way that Elon put the lawsuit together said, Sam approached me to start OpenAI because he told me that, okay, here we go. Perfect. Let me pull it up. Thank God I found this. The founding agreement of OpenAI. So this is in the lawsuit. This is what Elon Musk is putting forward as the lawsuit. Mr. Altman purported to share Mr. Musk's concerns over the threat posed by HGI. And of course, this is from Elon's viewpoint, right? We'll figure all this out in court. And then, Altman wrote that development of superhuman machine intelligence is probably the greatest threat to the continued existence of humanity. There are other threats that I think are more certain to happen, but are likely to destroy every human in the universe. Later that same year, Mr. Altman approached Mr. Musk with a proposal that they join forces to form a nonprofit AI lab that would try to catch up to Google in the race of AGI, but it would be the opposite of Google, right? And so from what I read here, and this is where maybe we can start a discussion, Richard, because it's like this whole thing is a mess. Yep. What I read here is that Elon's lawsuit claims that this is basically Sam's idea that there should be an open source thing that him and Elon and Greg should start as a counterweight to Google. And then if we read through the blog post, it seems like at some point all parties kind of agreed that having a non-profit open source structure was not going to raise enough funds because compute is supremely expensive. And so once they landed on there, it seemed like Elon is like, okay, cool. So if we have to go the for-profit route, I kind of want control of OpenAI. And they're like, no. Then it's like, okay, how about we bring it to Tesla? And they're like, no. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to go do my own thing. And then I'll keep throwing money at you guys and y'all figure out what you guys want to do, right? And then I think over time, what happened is with OpenAI becoming a very close partner with Microsoft, which basically took all the funding that was with OpenAI at the beginning. They went and partnered with Microsoft. Then Sam got fired from the board at some point, and then he came back and got rid of the entire board and made it his own board. I think all of this maybe, I'm trying to read between the lines here, maybe made Elon uncomfortable, and he's like, okay, I need to sue, right? But then OpenAI is like, you're such a hypocrite because you're for-profit. How come we can't be the for-profit? And I think Elon's counter is, you're saying you're open, but you're not. And you took my money to make something that is not open, but you're saying is open. This is where I think we are right now, but I could be 100% wrong. I'm going to throw it to you now, Richard.
I think you're about 32% wrong. About 60.
Oh, that's not bad.
Right. Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, why not 69?
Yeah, so first, before we have to set the stage, right? So I went, because we got to understand, because we're talking about ChatGPT 4, right? That was kind of like the subject. So indeed. I got two jokes, one from ChatGPT and one from ChatGPT 4. So we'll see the improvement, how impressive. ChatGPT joke, why the AI cross the road?
Why?
To prove it was not a robot chicken.
Nah.
Okay, that's ChatGPT. All right. Now ChatGPT 4.
Okay. All right.
A priest, a rabbi, and a minister walk into a bar. The bartender looks at them and says, "Is this a joke?"
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that was better.
Way better.
Yeah. Way better. Much deeper.
The first one was like a 2 out of 10. The second one's like a 6.5, like a 5.5.
I think the first one's like a -2. The second one's a 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
So we go back to Elon's lawsuit, 2005. He's talking about the founding agreement. I'm trying to place this in context. It looks like a lot of the claims that Altman has made in his whatever that they put out yesterday kind of relate to a time period later, 2017, 2018. I think they put out some kind of press release about they were gonna needed money. 2019, they hooked up with Microsoft. 2020, the founding agreement is 2015. So we talked about this a little bit. The founding agreement's kind of sloppy. It's not not like I would like it to be, and that's why they have the promissory estoppel claim, if you recall.
Right.
And we talked about there would be emails that come out in discovery would probably kind of set the framework. Now we already see that there's. So what struck me,
and just to bring the audience up to speed, basically what you're saying is because it's not written in, they don't have a written contract, they have to go off of like emails and what they agreed upon, and Elon has to prove that that was enough for them to basically form a binding agreement, not necessarily a written contract.
Yeah. Okay. So it's nice if the written agreement's in one piece. You can put it together if you can get all the terms in a document, or if it's not a contract and Elon relied upon this, spent a bunch of money, he could still recover. That's why he claimed promissory estoppel. But that relates to the 2015 founding agreement. So I was kind of trying to put this in play and try to kind of reconcile what they said and what Elon said. So I think Elon said basically that it was the most dangerous thing around, and it had to be really supervised. Couldn't be in one person's hand. They couldn't have it. On top of that, the way they could do that is nonprofit open source. That was kind of their thought process. So let's assume they have an agreement. That's the agreement. I think that never changed. The only thing, the change was in terms of how they were going to implement it. His paramount concern about it being potentially a destructive force against humanity still is his paramount concern. In fact, I think that's why he got pissed off because he's competing against Google at the time, right? That's kind of the competition. He's concerned.
The reason why OpenAI exists is to fight Google in the first place.
He's concerned, and these guys are whatever they're doing. Altman and the other gentleman, they weren't going to generate enough money to make it work against Google. Had basically unlimited assets. Tesla was going to be the means for kind of accelerating the process. They weren't willing to do that. At that point in time, Elon's conclusion is, listen, Google's going forward. I think it's a potentially destructive force to humanity. Hasn't stopped. Our agreement hasn't changed. So our founding agreement remains the same. If we're going to do something, it's got to be, in essence, it can't be a destructive force. So once they sign up with Microsoft, even though it's basically the open source version of GPT-4, Elon has big concerns now because he knows it's going to be commercialized, and he knows that it may not be for basically for humanity's benefit. And he doesn't change that founding agreement. And again, I think the premise of the founding agreement is to prevent destruction to the human race. So for Elon's perspective, notwithstanding whatever he said, notwithstanding that he wanted Tesla to financially benefit, notwithstanding that he might be, basically the controlling shareholder of Tesla, it doesn't change the ultimate purpose of the founding agreement was to protect humanity. And that carries over, notwithstanding whatever happens. Again, it has certain defects in how it was represented, but it's 2015. It's kind of before these times. Now, perhaps, and we will see, Altman might have claims against Elon for use of the technology. And they might flip it to kind of change kind of the leverage of this lawsuit, because Elon is pursuing that through Tesla. And, in the discussions, it was discussing a full self-driving and those elements. And obviously those are in there too. What struck me interesting is that this came out at all. So would these guys release this document, Altman, without their attorneys? I doubt it. Why would the attorneys want this out? I think they want to influence the jury in San Francisco. So they wanted to paint Elon, who had accused these guys of being, solely interested in profit and exposing mankind to disaster, they wanted to change the focus. And even though they kind of exposed their strategy, which I think that's kind of the thing that struck me, usually you don't. You don't want to give the other side a preview. And they showed a couple of emails and what their perspective is going to be. They must have thought it was more important to influence the jury than their concern about exposing some strategy or emails that they did. So again, that I struck that of note. So I don't think these two are irreconcilable. I don't think the positions are irreconcilable. I believe Elon believed there was an agreement, and that these guys believe that there was discussions about changing the structure because they needed to raise cash. I think both could be true, but we'd have to look with the paramount purpose. The underlying purpose of the founding agreement was to protect mankind. The means to getting there was the nonprofit and open source.
Got it. So then what you're basically saying is for Elon to win, let's say to win the lawsuit, the way it's framed, really what he needs to prove is that OpenAI, by going against the founding agreement, is a threat to humanity.
Yeah.
That's all he has to prove.
Yeah, that agreement is still in force and effect, and everybody's paramount concern was the same. And going to Microsoft and ChatGPT-4, because the breach only is now. It's 2023 when ChatGPT-4 came out, not 2020. So it's now, and that's because it is a threat to humanity. So I think that's the position that runs through, and it doesn't. That founding agreement still runs through. Again, the burden on Elon's counsel will be to establish the clarity of that agreement. And again, they showed a reference in the complaint some areas where it was documented. Again, I'm sure there's probably hundreds of emails between these parties where if you looked at them, you could make an argument that somehow it references the founding agreement or the intention. So that's what Elon's attorneys have to kind of establish. Elon obviously relied upon whatever. He spent a bunch of money. So that's part of the equation, and that's evidence that there was something between the parties, or else he wouldn't be spending money, spending his time, hiring people, etc.
Got it. So then would OpenAI, under that scenario, OpenAI, if that's how the lawsuit is framed, then OpenAI has to prove that them going down the for-profit route, the whatever way that they've structured it, is not bad for humanity. And some of the proof that I guess they put out here with those emails, what they're trying to say is like, hey, the same guy that's bringing the lawsuit forward was not only supportive of what we're doing, or was supportive of what we're doing right now, but essentially is doing the same thing with Tesla and in a loose way with XAI. So if we're hurting humanity, isn't he hurting humanity? Is that sort of like the loose?
Yeah, that's the loose structure. And he would say that I'm not a threat. And even in the language, it says, and I don't remember who said it, but it's this group of people. They said they would make it open when appropriate. So in the agreement amongst the parties, it didn't say it had to be open source right away. It said open when appropriate. So the fact that Elon has it and it goes private, I don't think is then meaningful with respect to that.
Okay, got it.
And again, they're and just to be clear, so OpenAI, that's one, is that we're not a threat, and it's that's one aspect. The second aspect is just a straight legal argument. There's no enforceable agreement between the parties because the terms weren't specific enough, and he was doing his own thing anyway. So whatever money he was spending because it was going to go to Tesla for Tesla's benefit, full self-driving, whatever. That'll be some kind of argument like that.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Now, what's really interesting here. Okay. So I guess the screen share doesn't work anymore. That's fun. So what's very interesting here is that when OpenAI put the blog post out on X yesterday evening, about 19 hours ago, Elon replied to that post saying, change your name to Closed AI and I will drop the lawsuit. Right. So I think what's interesting about that framing, and this is what I'm getting from like this whole thing, is that it seems like his biggest thing, regardless of, if we put aside what OpenAI put out, which I want to discuss as well, his big shtick, the thing that really bothers him, is that you have a company that's doing the opposite of what it's supposed to be, like it's marketing itself to do. And so if he's saying something like that and he says, okay, if you just change your name to Closed AI, I'll be fine, right? I'm going to drop the lawsuit. Do you think that is a legitimate, like, based on how you're reading the case, if they actually magically change their name to Closed AI, do you think that actually, like, how does that align with trying to prove that they're dangerous for humanity? Right?
Yeah. So here's my take on that. I think he shouldn't have said it. Because my read is, if you're saying all I have to do is change the name, then what's your concern about the ultimate humanity, whatever? If they could just change their name and then go do their thing with Microsoft and create the end of the world, and that's okay by you, then what are we talking about? So I wouldn't have, and I don't, and it may be the case he was just being flippant. I would think if asked after he spoke to his lawyers, he would just say, I was pissed off and I was just being flippant. Obviously, that doesn't resolve the issue because humanity is at stake. But that, if I were OpenAI's counsel and I'm in court, I'm going to cite that up. I'm going to cite it for that reason.
And sorry, go ahead. Let me turn around.
No, that's all I think.
Okay. And this is kind of like what's extremely like, I think what the most interesting piece here is that it seems like it's all about Elon not trusting Sam to do what he thinks he should be doing, and Elon thinking that he can be a much better gatekeeper of AGI. And because of how Sam is marketing the product and how, based on Elon's claim, brought it forward as an open source, collected funding to get it off the thing, and essentially brought all the pieces together to make it happen. And then when the individual that put the most money forward couldn't gain control of that thing once they decided it should be for profit, he steps away and Sam's like, well, we'll just partner with a new sugar daddy. Right. No better way to say it. They go to Microsoft. Microsoft now has access to all the all the licensing and all the IP that they've built, which gives them a pretty gigantic advantage, which they got there by bootstrapping a lot of the funds that Elon gave them. And then the guy gets fired and comes back, and it's very nebulous what OpenAI is exactly. I'm guessing from Elon's standpoint, it's like, bro, like, I gave you all this money, you didn't give me control, now you gave control to somebody else, and I don't trust you. So I'm coming after you.
Yeah, I was going to say that, it's also
right or wrong, right? Right or wrong. Yeah. That's how I'm reading the situation.
And I agree he doesn't trust Sam. And I was just, if you look at it from a profit motive, and this may not be a accurate way of looking at it, but Elon's, depending on what day it is, he's worth $200 billion. So if he makes another 10 billion, 20 billion, whatever on some AI product, or 50 billion or 100 billion, it's not going to change his lifestyle, his generational wealth for everybody on earth. Altman, he may got paid a nice amount of money from Microsoft, but if this thing goes, he's going to be, a generational billionaire. And so I think it's reasonable to suspect that he might be motivated by the economics, and that makes somebody less reliable because they may make decisions that aren't in the best interest of humanity. They're in their own personal interest. That doesn't mean that Elon's right in terms of him being the best steward for the technology, but I understand and I agree with you entirely. He thinks he's a better steward than Altman, and Altman is not trustworthy.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. And this is just hypotheticals, we're throwing out just ideas here. Do drop some comments in the comment section below. I'll try to pull some up in a little bit here as we go towards the second half of this conversation. If Elon can prove that, okay, so let me answer this question. If Sam did make a gigantic amount of money from the partnership with Microsoft, and Elon can prove that he did, would that be a significant piece of the puzzle for him to win the lawsuit? That it was for personal gain?
Yeah, I would think that would be evidence of personal gain, and again, evidence of his lack of trustworthiness. That it's a monetary
because
play.
It started as a nonprofit open source.
Started as a nonprofit, and now it's like, the guy could be the richest man in the world, and that's kind of what's driving him. And he's not transparent about what he's doing. And the technology is so potentially dangerous. The lack of transparency is really disconcerting.
Yeah.
I think those are reasonable. That's reasonable.
And how much is Sam getting fired from the board a significant variable in this lawsuit as well? Like, now that we have their OpenAI's statement within that context, because it's almost like, and I'm not saying Elon's a saint here, right? I'm not saying Elon's a saint. I'm not saying Sam's a saint. Clearly, there's bad blood between the two. They're pissed off at each other. The way I read it is Elon's pissed off that they took his money and it didn't give him the control because he felt like he could do a better job. And now this guy's running loose doing whatever he wants, and that rubs him the wrong way. So he's going to bring him to court. And Sam, on the flip side, took the money, still pushed forward this company as an open source nonprofit. It's clearly a closed source for profit, and he was dismissed by the board of OpenAI, and then magically was brought back, put in a new board, and now who the hell knows what the hell OpenAI is anymore?
Yeah, I think the problem with that is that it's, again, not supposed to be controllable by a single person. So he left. When he came back, he stacked the board with people that are friendly to him. So in essence, it is the claim. Yeah, it's him. And he's got control. So it's a problem, because that's not kind of what the understanding would have been.
Yeah. You said before we went live that this is confusing. That this, you're confused. So talk me through that.
I was confused procedurally why it was put out in the first place, because I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to disclose my strategy. Because again, I think from what they're saying here, I could anticipate a cross complaint will come out at some point in time. I just wouldn't have led that way. I would have kept it. I don't like discussing evidence in public, because at a deposition, because we're day 2, right? And nobody knows anything. I mean, people know things, but in terms of what's out there, what the evidence is, nobody knows anything. 6 months from now, people are going to have a completely different view of the world. So there may be evidence that comes out that directly contradicts what Altman put out yesterday. And so why undercut yourself if you don't know what's coming out in the future? So I wouldn't have done that. So that's the confusing part. I came back with why they would do it if counsel was involved. That would be to influence the jury in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I think what's interesting there is, like, I wonder, and you kind of mentioned this, is like trying to influence the jury. I do also wonder is, like, Elon's been going hard at OpenAI for a solid year. I mean, he's been putting him through the coals hardcore. And do you think this is just like that's enough? We're just going to punch back and just let's humiliate him in front of the public by showing that, hey, you're complaining about open source nonprofit, bro. Like, you were fine with this, and all of a sudden you got Tesla XAI. Like, what the hell?
Well, how about, like, I thought, the alternative would be, or an alternative would be, how about if it's just a bluff, right? And you just want to get Microsoft to appoint some kind of supervisory board that monitors what they're doing to kind of keep them in check. And you sued them, and you'll negotiate some resolution where the resolution will be there will be some oversight, and maybe they'll change your name. Maybe it will be change your name, oversight by experts who will make sure that Microsoft doesn't take over the world. Something like that. I'm joking, but something along those lines. Maybe he's bluffing, and maybe that's why he put out that tweet after the tweet we looked at, where he said, just change the name. Maybe, if you were bluffing, that would be consistent with a bluff.
Interesting. So, but do you think that's a realistic sort of outcome where they do settle? But they settle, right? Let's not even say it goes to court. They settle, like, just change your name and, like, define that this is going to be safe. OpenAI is probably not going to do that, though, right? I mean, that's
Microsoft would probably not. I mean, I think Microsoft, because Microsoft really, I don't think Microsoft would want it done. I would say if it wasn't Elon, is that a possibility? Yeah, less likely with Elon because he's generally principled and doesn't like to, give up on what he believes. Even if there's another way of maybe handling it.
Yeah, and so from your standpoint, do you think the OpenAI blog has changed anything as it pertains to Elon's chances to win this lawsuit?
Well, I mean, it does create, it does, make a more even playing field in terms of the facts. Elon portrayed Altman and Brockman, I think it's Brockman, as kind of scumbags and that they were, whatever. So now we know that, maybe it's not like black and white. There's, blame to go around for everybody, at least some amount. So it probably does change things a little bit because it puts the facts kind of more even, and that's why they probably did it. But again, like I said, the underlying agreements from 2015, if they're able to establish its existence and enforceability, then Elon has a good chance of winning the case.
Got it. Okay. Helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think it was when you said it's confusing that they would do something like this. The fact that they put the emails out there, does it paint Elon in a good light? Of course not. Like, it paints him as a hypocrite, and I think that was the goal. I think Elon's rebuttal, especially with this tweet, right? With this tweet, I think his rebuttal is like, you can call me a hypocrite all you want. My issue is that you're masquerading as something you're not. And I got Tesla on XAI. But what do you got? You got my money, and you got your sugar daddy, and you took my money, and you made this thing, and then you're saying that you're open source and nonprofit, and you're not. So like, what the hell, right? I think that's like the back and forth these guys are having right now.
Yeah, from like a practical standpoint, in presenting it to a jury is tough though, because again, you can't just give them one document. That's the contract. It's going to be piecemeal. So you're going to put up these blowing up, these emails, and it's not easy for people to follow because it's already confusing because we have a 2015 agreement and then kind of things change later on. So did the change completely because that's going to be an argument. Did the stuff that happened in 2018, 2019 completely wipe out the prior agreement of the parties? Or is it just kind of, that was discussions, they were kind of changing, the way they're doing business, but it didn't affect the 2015 agreement. And it's not easy to follow.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anything you want to add before we take some Q&A from the crowd?
No, I always love the crowd.
Okay. All right, crowd. Go ahead and send us your questions. It would be great if you put question before your question so we can pull it up. It's easy to pull it up.
You can also I should say, we will see, by the way, probably next 30, 60 days, we will see a bunch of filings. Depending on how they go at it, we will learn a lot more about the Altman's claims. It'll come out in those filings.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. From Honest Broker, one defense Altman has put out is that Elon didn't seem to care until just recently. Is that what you've gathered from Altman's or OpenAI's blog?
I didn't get that at all. I mean, it seems like to me there's going to be a boatload of emails between them during these times where they're discussing all these issues. I think he cared when ChatGPT-4 came out and it became apparent. I think the allegation is it reasons better than the average human. So at that point in time, it became a concern. I think it's reasonable. Also, it was within the statute of limitations.
Here's another one. Altman grossly besmirched Elon's character by changing a company founded on altruistic ideals that he swindled Elon's investment deceptively. I think that would be Elon's point, and that's why he brought the lawsuit forward.
And I guess the point would be also, what would they have? How far along would they have been, but for Elon's money and contributions? Probably nowhere, right? They wouldn't have had anything to take to Microsoft.
Right. I think that's what, like, one of Elon's greatest defenses here is that he the reason OpenAI is where it's at is because of his money. Set aside the for-profit aspect of it. And then if it wasn't for him, then it's like not there. And I think the other case you can make too is like, hey, if we went for profit, I'm not sure if this would have happened, right? But I think one of the arguments you can make is like, hey, if we went for profit while I was there, we would have just changed the name to Closed AI, because at that point it would have been Closed AI. But you're continuing as Open AI, right? Well, not saying it would have happened, but that's going to be part of the discussion, I'm assuming.
And I think, and they'll probably show it, I think there was probably so much, because Elon probably brought it up, there was probably so much discussion about the danger to humanity. And I think that's going to be all over the place. And that's what Elon's going to jump on, all that discussion.
Yeah. Is this best fought in the courts rather than taken up by a regulator or lobbied in Congress? I mean, I think if Elon brought a lawsuit forward, it has to be fought in the courts, right?
Yeah. The regulators are immune from liability and responsibility and are influenced by lobbyists and whoever else. So I don't think regulators are. And I know this, by the way, from MMTLP, we've been in this position. So we're dealing with FINRA, the SEC, we're dealing with Congress and the House and the Senate. So, and this is 15 months, 16 months that's been going on. So if you think they will give a quick remedy or a smart remedy, I think you're mistaken. That doesn't mean that the court, that doesn't mean that this court will either, by the way. But at least we don't know yet. And Elon did well in San Francisco, despite, it seems odd, but he's done well legally in San Francisco. So,
yeah, and it does seem like he only obviously brings suits forward that he feels like he can win pretty handily. I don't think this goes to court. I don't think he makes a lawsuit if Sam doesn't get fired from OpenAI. I think if Sam doesn't get fired and they continue as such, I think this lawsuit wouldn't have been brought forward. But I think that level of distrust is like what my gut's saying. That level of distrust is what's prompted him to bring this whole thing forward.
I think if Sam would have called him during that time period and just kind of let him know what was going on and what he was tending to do, that Elon would have felt much better about things.
Right. From Chelsea, what would happen if Elon wins the case?
He'll be able to kind of put the Altman in the very difficult position. He'll have an obligation, basically, to the technology that he's licensing to Microsoft. He won't really have that ability to do that. So it puts him in a pretty odd position. That's also why I wondered or threw out the fact about Microsoft not being directly named in the case, even though they are influenced. And at some point in time, they might be involved in the case directly.
Yeah.
But I think it would basically put Altman out of business.
And that would be a terrifying outcome for Sam and OpenAI and Microsoft specifically, right? So like at that point, doesn't Microsoft feel like they almost have to be like, can OpenAI bring Microsoft into its defense? Is that a possibility?
Microsoft could contact Elon and Tesla directly too. They could go around Altman.
Be like, yo, chill.
Chill, or let's work out a deal, something.
Interesting. Okay. What's the likelihood of that happening?
Usually there's discussions, at least people try. It may not be any real agreement, but generally, if I'm on a lawyer on a case and there's 10 parties, even if I don't think it's going to work, I reach out, because you never know. So I would expect lawyers to reach out and see if there's anything that can be structured.
Interesting. Damon, do we know the details of his departure from OpenAI? This is Elon. Did Elon maintain any stake? I don't think we know. I mean, OpenAI says that Elon left, the way they frame it is after he couldn't get control of OpenAI and after they couldn't put it under Tesla, that he left because from the emails that they showed that it was going to have enough resources. So he needs to figure out a way to put together the resources to get OpenAI to the thing. But do we know why Elon left OpenAI?
We don't. And we don't know like the percentages. That's one of the terms we don't know. Because usually you would say, we have an agreement and Elon owns 40% of OpenAI and Sam owns 20%, whatever. There's no.
And here's this question kind of aligning with that a little bit.
There's no agreement on that particular term. So how do you do that? Maybe you use, how much does the money guy usually get when they put up the money? You know, do they get 50%? Yeah, I usually get 50%. So maybe you'd allocate it like that. But that is an open term. So we don't know, because we don't know what the percentages were. Yeah. And he didn't, as far as I could see, you know, maybe we'll see emails to the contrary. He didn't give up any rights to the founding agreement. He didn't say it was terminated. He didn't say I rescind my rights to the founding agreement. So as far as from what I've seen, it hasn't changed.
What are the key learnings from this and potential legal repercussions to loopholes, pitfalls that nonprofits in tech deal with today and in our future? There
is a clear, the lesson you learn from this one, if you're going to have an agreement and you want it in writing, make it really clear and cover everything, and don't have like some handshake BS. We're going to do it, because it makes the situation we're in.
Yeah.
An agreement, because, somebody could argue that what they negotiated was an agreement to agree. An agreement to agree is not a contract. The only thing that saved Elon, really, and I think it really does save Elon, is putting up that money and everything he did, because that takes it to a different place.
Yeah. I really do wonder. It's so interesting. If Elon approached it, let's say what Elon put together in the lawsuit, which is Sam approached me to put this together. That's how you framed it. If it was the opposite, if Elon approached Sam, do you think any of this holds water from his standpoint?
If Elon bowed out at some point in time because he just thought they're just not going to raise enough money to make this work, then I think he'd be in the same position no matter what.
Okay.
With them. They'd be with Microsoft. He would still be either concerned. I don't know. What's the true reason?
What I'm saying is, does the lawsuit still hold water? Like, let's say he was the one approaching Sam. Hey, I need help.
I don't think it makes a difference, because he never renounced his rights. I mean, he still if he had rights pursuant to that founding agreement and pursuant to putting up the money, he still has them. He hasn't given them up. So it hasn't changed whether he started it or was responding to it. It only could be in terms of, they may characterize he was out. There's no document, but we had a meeting and he said, he got frustrated with us and said, I'm out. You guys do your own thing. I'm going to do Tesla and whatever. They may characterize it, but we haven't seen anything yet in writing that reflects that.
Okay. Now, after this blog post has been out, what do you think are the chances that this goes to trial? That there's no motion to dismiss here? Like, do you think it goes to trial?
I think
there'll be a motion, but do you think it'll be approved?
No, but because it doesn't have to be. What often happens is, so this is in state court. So now you get a civil procedure lesson. So
thank you.
All right. So in federal court, when you challenge a complaint, it's called a motion to dismiss. In state court, where they are, when you challenge the complaint, it's called a demur.
Okay.
So it's a different document. So what they will file probably is a demur and something called a motion to strike, and they'll try to attack the complaint. Oftentimes, you have to rewrite the complaint once or twice, not unusual. So even if it happens, it won't be determinative of anything. So that's what's likely to happen. They will either file a demur and motion to strike, which I expect them to do, or they will file an answer and potentially a cross complaint. That will be their next filing, one or the other.
Got it. And we expect that to come through in the next 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, 30 days. It's typically 30 days after they're personally served.
Yeah.
Unless there's an agreement between the parties to extend that time, but it shouldn't go beyond 60 days.
Yeah. Okay. Wild times. What else? Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway for me is like the whole notion of nonprofit open source, like it's dead. Like what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You got Microsoft with Sam Altman. So you have three gods. right now. You have 3 AI gods. You got Elon Musk, you got Sam Altman, and you got Google. Like, I'm blanking on the CEO's name, but those are our gods.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Amazon is in the equation also. At least that's what I've heard.
Sure.
That's what I've heard.
It's almost like companies with a giant amount of resources have the ability to create this thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what Elon says. That's kind of, we got pissed off. Basically,
100%.
You know, you're competing with Google. You need billions, and the compute power too. You need both. And otherwise you're just kind of wasting your time. And how many companies like that are around?
Like
right?
10, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. NVIDIA, you know, basically provides everything for everybody. And then 9 or 10 companies are trying to, you know, they're running.
What
an amazing, you know, it could
go ahead.
I was gonna say it could potentially be the most valuable asset in the history of Earth.
Artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. By far.
And NVIDIA is the one that's building the brain, like the physical brain. And then each company is creating the connections between the neurons in that brain.
But we know that's kind of based on past history, you know, it won't happen. There's probably 2 or 3 companies out there we've never heard of that will sneak in and will be amazing. And, you know, today NVIDIA is like, obviously, NVIDIA is like Tesla was in 2020, 21, that period of time. But things can change very fast, especially in what we're talking about now. It's going to change every day.
Yeah, man. So the implications like this, I feel like this just like it's starting to come to a head as far as like what the future of AI is going to look like from a governance perspective. And it's And
is it going to carry over to litigation related to robotics stuff too?
Like self-driving stuff like that too? Because that's technically artificial intelligence too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the future is weird. Who would have thunk it? Look at that. Richard, thank you so much. This was super awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you everybody that's watched this and comment. If you enjoyed it, like it, subscribe, want to support, description. Not legal advice at @raw999. Fantastic channel to follow on YouTube at Not Legal Advice, or you can follow him on X as well at raw999. You can see it right there on the screen. Any parting words before we shut the sucker down?
Thanks, Farzad, and thank you, Sydney.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate you. All right, everybody, have a great day. We'll see you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.